Hi, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Sara Fienup, and this is Behavior Support at Home. Welcome to episode 2. Today, we're going to be talking about setting clear and consistent behavior expectations, specifically at home during this time when most of us are home due to the coronavirus, and a lot of us are home with our little kids and our big kids. So today we're going to be talking about how to establish clear and consistent behavior expectations that are really important to be doing even when we're not at home during the coronavirus. It's really essential for families to do this. Very, very helpful, and a lot of research behind this at the school level. And so we're going to talk about how to bring that research into your home and to improve behavior at home by doing this. Okay, so if you don't know already, if you didn't attend the first session, which was about setting up a routine, I highly recommend you do so. But anyway, if you are new to us here, I work as a behavior specialist with the Lower Hudson Regional Partnership Center, and our goal is to really improve outcomes for students with disabilities, but really all students. And I work as a school psychologist and as a board certified behavior analyst. And I also have 2 kids at home, ages 4 and 7. So I'll be speaking to you today not only as a practitioner, but also as a parent. So hopefully you find this helpful. We're going to be sharing a screen now so that you can see the PowerPoint and kind of an agenda that we have in front of us today. Okay. I will be sharing my email at the end of this presentation. And also, if you look in the description of this YouTube video, you'll see a link to a Google Drive, which has some resources in there for you that you'll be able to use at your discretion. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Our kind of agenda for today is to talk about what do we mean by behavior expectations? What is the definition of that? Then we'll be talking about the benefits of setting up your expectations. And then we will be talking about how to do that and how to teach and reinforce those behavior expectations once you have developed them. Okay, so what do I mean by behavior expectations? Basically, this means that you as a family, so whoever it is that's responsible for providing, parenting, who is responsible for parenting your children, you want to really decide together what your behavior expectations are. So this is really a set of values that you deem important. And we'll talk about how to identify what those are in a moment. But it's really, okay, what do we find important? What do we think is important for our child? What do we want to teach our child? And also, I want you to be thinking about these behavior expectations as skills. These are skills that your child or children will need to live a happy, healthy, and productive life. So it's really setting aside the time to think about what exactly do we want our kids to do now and to be able to do in the future, and really think and planning that out rather than have it being like happenstance or just kind of arbitrary or kind of rolling the dice. It's really thinking strategically and proactively about what behaviors and skills you think are important for your child to learn. Thirdly, these behavior expectations with the framework that I'm proposing to you today, and with the model that positive behavior support recommends, is that these expectations that you develop are positively stated, and we'll get into that in a little while, and that they're age appropriate or developmentally appropriate. So your expectations for your preschoolers might change over time. They probably will change over time. Or maybe they'll stay the same, but the language that you use will change over time as they get older, okay? And these behavior expectations are really the foundation for all of the parenting decisions that you'll be making on a minute by minute, day to day, week by week basis, okay? So what are the benefits of having clear behavior expectations? Well, as you probably have figured out already, if you have clear behavior expectations, it's going to provide consistency across settings and across caregivers. So if you and your husband or you and your wife or the grandparent that's in the picture, if you have different expectations for your child, as you can imagine, there are going to be some issues that occur. Mom said that it's okay that I stay out late. Dad says that it's not okay. What's going to happen when you don't agree? Mom says it's okay if I eat dessert, even if I don't finish my dinner. Dad says it's not okay. So it's really important to be on the same page so that your child is getting a clear message and a consistent message. And you're most likely to see your child doing what you want them to do if you're on the same page, right? If you're being consistent. And it's less confusing as well. So it can be confusing when there's people telling you different things at any given moment. So it's really important to be on the same page. Also, it provides consistency across settings. So it doesn't change for me and my husband when our kids are at home versus in the community versus at a grandparent's house versus a friend's house. It's always important to us that they are kind. It's always important to us that they have safe hands and feet. Okay, so it's something that, and we'll get into this, that depending on the situation, it might look a little different, but having consistent expectations across settings is really important. Also, having clear behavior expectations when they're positively stated, which is what we're emphasizing here, is, emphasizing what to do rather than what not to do. So rather than, hearing, don't do this, don't do that, stop doing that, you're actually telling your child what they should be doing instead, which, as we talked about before, if these are really skills that we're teaching our kids, then we want to teach them the skills that they're going to need to be successful in life. And also it makes behavior management more doable. So as a parent, if you know what those few things are that you find important, that you want your child to be doing, then every interaction you have, every opportunity you have to parent is going to be easier because you're going to have this framework in mind. You're going to know exactly what you want your kid to do, and then everything that comes after that will fall in line. Okay. If you don't know what you want your kid to be doing, well, then you're going to be more prone to snap decisions, and your emotions are going to be more likely to get in the way. But if you know exactly what you want your kids to be doing, well, then when an instance occurs where you might, in the past have become upset, well, you'll be more likely to say, okay, I want them to be able to do this thing. This is why, because it's important. And then you'll be ready to teach them and reinforce it and error correct when possible. So let's look at some examples of behavior expectations. You might be wondering, well, what do you mean by this, Sarah? What does this even look like? So here are some examples of behavior expectations that you could deem important in your family. You could say, okay, it's important for us to keep hands and feet to ourselves. Now, remember, I'm talking to a wide audience here, a wide range of parents here and caregivers. We have people listening that have very little kids. We have kids that are going all the way up into high school. We also have parents that are working with, that have children with disabilities, all the way from ADHD, autism, developmental disabilities, multiple disabilities, physical disabilities, speech language impairments. So we're going to be thinking about that. These examples hopefully will be relevant to, some of these examples will be relevant to you. Okay. Okay. Using kind words. That might be a very broad expectation that you have for your child. Be respectful is another example. Tell the truth could be an example. Now, I'm not going to tell you what your expectations should be. These are just general ones that we see that are common, especially in schools, but you really have to think about what you want to be important. And we don't want it to be, 50 different expectations. That's going to be really difficult for you to focus on and follow through with. And it's going to be really difficult for your child to remember. Okay. So we also want to kind of stick to, 3 to 5 broad expectations, and then we can talk a little bit in a little while how to get some more specific examples for each of those. Okay, so next we want to look at some non-examples. So a non-example here is no hitting. So we would not recommend having no hitting as an expectation because it's not positively stated. And the reason for this, the reason why we want to focus on what to do rather than what not to do, is if you tell a kid what not to do, they are going to probably think about, whether consciously or unconsciously, they're going to be thinking about all the other things that they could do that, as long as it doesn't follow the no hitting rule, it's okay. So if you say no hitting, okay, well, how about kicking? Or how about spitting? Or how about punching? Okay, so if you are more specific and keep hands and feet to self, it gives the child less wiggle room. So tell them exactly what you want them to do. Okay, another non-example, no name calling. Okay, if I don't call you a name, how about if I just use a bad tone of voice, or I use sarcasm. It's not a bad name, but I'm using sarcasm. So we want to be really specific about what we want them to do instead, like use kind words. No talking back. Okay, same idea. It's not positively stated. Here's another non-example, have integrity. Okay, it's a little vague and a little open to interpretation. And especially for little kids, it really doesn't mean a whole lot. So rather than saying have integrity, just say it like you mean it, and how about just tell the truth, okay? So here's an example of what your expectations could look like. So this is actually something that I created a few months ago for my kids, and I thought it was important to show because, as you can see, it's not perfect. It's written down on a piece of paper, and I didn't even tape it up straight. I didn't even tape it. My kid took a sticker and used a sticker to stick it to the table. So this is real life here, people. All right, so we have 4 expectations here. Be safe, be kind, follow directions right away, and be quiet and calm. Okay, and the reason why it says yes is because my 7-year-old wrote that on there. On the flip side, he wanted to write down all the things that you are not supposed to do, and he wrote the word no on there. Okay, but this is what is shown. This is what the kids see. And here's a picture of what where we actually posted it. So this is some of my nieces and my son, and that is posted right there, right in the middle of them playing, and it allows me as a parent to remind them periodically, not just when they're doing the wrong thing, but proactively, about our expectations. Okay, everyone, remember, well, we want you to use kind words when you're working together. Share your materials, that's being kind. Okay, if something isn't working out quite right, remember, we're not going to whine. We're going to use calm and quiet words. And remember, we're going to be safe. So if you get frustrated with someone, we're not going to hit. We're going to use a safe body. Okay, so those are the prompts for me as a parent to remember to use that language. Here's another example of some behavior expectations. Now this does come from a school, but I wanted to show you how you could use visuals. This is really, really important. We talked about this on the first session, how important it is to have visuals and picture cues for those little kids and kids with disabilities. So here you have be safe, be kind, be responsible. That's a very, very common set of expectations, those 3. But then they've gone a step further and they've thought about, well, what does it look like to be safe? Safe is kind of vague still, right? We want to be more specific. So they have actually taken the time to say, well, being safe in our school means keeping your body to yourself, keeping hands to yourself, and having walking feet. What does kind mean? It means sharing and taking turns, keeping your eyes on the speaker, and using a quiet voice, and so on. Here's another example of setting up expectations. This one is at the home setting. So be responsible, be respectful, be safe. Again, very common. But then this family has chosen to actually outline exactly what each of those expectations looks like and sounds like in the different settings, or if you will, in the different routines. So to be responsible during morning means getting up on time and getting cleaned up and dressed quickly. Being respectful at morning time means trying a morning smile or a compliment and saying please and thank you, and so on and so forth. Now, you have to decide, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, how specific you want to get. You might just keep it to the general expectations, and that might be enough for you. You might want to get more specific and think about exactly what you want your kid to be able to do in every single routine, so that you have the language to prompt them and reinforce it, and so they know exactly what's expected. I would say the more severe the disability, the more specific you want to get. All right, so now we're ready to be thinking about, how do I identify my behavior expectations, Sarah? Here's what we recommend. We recommend that for number 1, you jot down the most challenging behaviors. Now this might seem contrary to what I'm saying, but we found that it's a lot easier for us as human beings to think about all the things that drive us crazy first. So we do that first. Think about all the things that drive you crazy, all the things that push your buttons, and list those. Then for each of those behaviors, you're going to identify the positive alternative. So what do you want them to do instead of that challenging behavior? And this is where it takes a little brain power and a little shift in thinking. we're really shifting our mindset here. But it's really important to do this because you're going to see that when you're parenting and when your kid makes a behavior error, when they're engaging in a challenging behavior, we have to change our mindset from saying, no, stop that, don't do that. What do you think you're doing? To, oh, what do I want them to do instead? So this is a really powerful exercise. So we want to jump right in here and get used to that. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So number one, let's say I jot down my most challenging behaviors at home. Whining. I hate when my kids whine. It drives me nuts. Hitting. When either one of my kids hits each other, and we had about a year period where probably more than a year, where my son was hitting us. Big problem. Talking back, not listening. Okay, they don't listen. They don't do what I tell them to do. Okay, now we're going to think about what's the positive alternative to that challenging behavior. For whining, okay, use a quiet and calm voice. Now that doesn't have to be that. You could say, well, the positive alternative to my kids whining would be to ask for help. Great, write it down. Hitting, what's an alternative to hitting? Being safe. Again, that might not be for you. You might want to be really specific and say, okay, the alternative to hitting is keeping your body to yourself, or keeping your hands, feet, and spit to yourself. I don't know. Okay, you might want to be really specific about what you want your kid to do instead. Talking back, the opposite of that is being kind for us. Not listening. Okay, not listening. Really, you mean that they're not following your direction. They're not doing what you ask them to do. So the positive alternative to that is following directions right away. Now, a common question I get from parents and educators when we talk about this is, they'll ask me, yeah, but they're not doing this right now. They're not being safe. They're not being kind. They're not following directions right away. And to that I say, yes, you're right. They're not yet. They're not yet. But we have to think about what we are aiming for. We have to think about what we're striving for so we can get there, so they can get there, so they can attain it. And it really is, again, this positive approach, this strength-based approach. This is not a deficit model. This is a strength-based model. And we want to think about exactly what we want the kids to be able to do, even if they're not able to do it now. And it's not to say that just because we wrote it down on a piece of paper that it's magically going to happen. No. At the end of this session, you'll see we're going to talk about, okay, now that we've established these expectations, how do we teach them? How do we positively reinforce them so that the kids will do them more often? It's not just going to work if you write it down. It takes intentional effort. Okay. All right, so let's practice. I think you should either pause the video right now and take some time to think of a positive alternative to each of these behaviors, or, just kind of move along with me here. But I think it's important to practice so that you can really get the hang of this. Okay, so we have 4 behaviors and then one of your choice. So go ahead and pause now. Okay, so refusing to share. An alternative to that could be to share, okay? Or it could be to offer another toy. Sometimes we don't want to share, and sometimes it's okay not to share. We don't always share everything as adults just because someone says, can I have that? Just because someone asks nicely doesn't mean that you should give it up. So you might say, okay, share is what you need to do. Or you could say, all right, if you really don't feel like sharing it, then offer another toy. Bad manners. How about saying please, thank you, and you're welcome, holding the door open. You could think of a lot more here too as well, but these are just some starting points. Swearing at your parents. What's an alternative to that? It could be to say it in your head. This is a skill. Okay, we all swear in our head sometimes. I know I do. So, and I might call people names in my head. And that is a skill to have. Some people might disagree with me. They might say, no, you should never have those thoughts about your parents, and you should never have those thoughts about other people. But I'm of the opinion that it's okay to have those thoughts. At least it's better than them saying it out loud. So let's teach our kids to just keep it in your head. Breaking curfew. What do you want them to do instead? How about be home on time? Or you might be okay with this, you might not. Or call by X amount of time if you'll be late. And then you have your choice as well, whatever you want to work on here. All right, so again, think about how specific do you need to be? Do you know, is it okay to have it just be very general, like I was showing you with the 4 expectations that are very broad? There's pros and cons to that, right? The con is that it's very vague, it's very subjective, and it doesn't necessarily mean your kid's going to pick up right away how to be safe. Okay, well, just because my mom said to be safe doesn't mean I'm going to do it. But it does take an extra effort for you to be thinking about in the moment, okay, what exactly do I want them to be doing? And so you're kind of, if you take this first approach with having broad expectations, it's less work now, but it's more work in the moment. So when an issue was occurring with your kid, you're going to have to think on the spot, okay, what is it that I want them to be doing to be safe? Oh, I want them to be getting off of the furniture, keeping your feet on the floor. Or, oh, what do I want them to be doing now to be safe? Oh, I want you to keep your hands to yourself and ask mom for help if Quinn is bothering you. Okay, so it's going to depend on the situation. Less work now, more work when the time comes, when an issue arises. Okay, kind of in the middle ground is having a few examples like we see in the middle here. So you have safe, kind, responsible, and then you have a few examples of what those could look like that are pretty much going to be applicable to any situation. And then we have all the way on the right, more intense choice is having examples specific to every single setting. So it's more work now, but it's probably going to be less work for you when the time comes. And it's also really nice as a proactive piece because when you're moving into that setting, okay, it's playtime. Okay, let's take a second and think about what our expectations are for playtime, and taking a moment to teach, taking a moment to model, taking a moment to have your kid practice before you actually enter in to the playtime situation. Now, a word to the wise, this is important. We've learned this from working with schools. When you choose this last choice here, if you choose this, we call it a matrix, okay, a matrix of expectations. If you choose this, great, but don't post the whole matrix. Don't tape up the whole matrix, because you're not gonna, at least I wouldn't, look at it. It's overwhelming. It's really hard to be like, okay, wait, what's the expectation here? It's really a starting point. It's like a curriculum, so to speak. So you would take this matrix with your partner, with your spouse, with your whoever's working, who's ever parenting your child, and then you would actually make setting specific posters. So you would take, okay, for morning routine, what does it mean to be responsible, respectful, and safe? And you might make a poster, much like the one you see in the middle here, just for morning routine. And then you would make a little poster for getting to school. You would make a little poster for homework time. You would make a little poster for playtime, for mealtime, for bedtime routine. And then you pull it out as necessary. Okay. If you participated in the first session when we talked about setting up routines, for each of those activities in your routine, you probably want to have your expectations spelled out. So for me, for morning meeting, I would need to know, well, what do I want my kids to do to be safe, kind, follow directions, and be quiet and calm in morning meeting? What do I need my kids to be able to do during learning time that's safe, kind, following directions, being quiet and calm? Same thing for lunchtime, for iPad time, for free play, for outdoor recess. For each of those routines, I want to be thinking about what exactly do I need my kids to do in order to be safe, kind, follow directions, and be quiet and calm. Make sense? Okay. All right. So now that we've talked about identifying your expectations, let's talk about how to actually teach them. Because again, it's not enough to just put them on a piece of paper. Okay. I'm going to go through kind of the lay people's terms here, and then when I'm finished with that item, I'm going to talk about the more behavior analytic term or more educational term. Just so you know, why not get educated while we're at it, right? Okay, so the first one is reminding your child about the expected behavior before entering a problematic situation. So I kind of touched on that a moment ago. If you're entering a playtime situation, for example, before you enter that situation, you want to go over the expected behaviors. If there's one in particular you know your kid has a hard time with, you're going to have them actually do it. So just this morning, before we started our morning meeting with my kids during our little homeschool time, my kid has been really whining a lot, and it's been really getting on my nerves. So before we even started our school day, I said, okay, Andrew, remember, before we start a school day, remember, we really got to work on the whining. We have to instead use our words, be calm, and then you're more likely to get what you want. So let's think about a time you might whine. Yesterday, I know you were whining because you really didn't want to eat an apple. You wanted to have a granola bar instead. So instead of whining, it's, oh, I really want a granola bar. I don't want an apple. Instead, you could say, Mommy, can I please have a granola bar? I can have an apple later. That's another way to do it. And then I actually have him practice it. So he actually practiced doing this. Now, my kids are used to that. They've been practicing the skills that we want them to do their whole lives. But I've noticed that other people that aren't used to this, it takes a little while. So I tried this with my niece once. I was trying to prompt her what to say and do instead of arguing with her sister. Like, okay, Grace, I need you to say, oh, I really don't want you to have that toy right now. I'm playing with it, whatever. And she looked at me like, what are you talking about? So if this isn't something your kids are used to, it's going to take a little bit of time for them to get used to, but it's really, really important, and a very effective tool is to have them actually do the behavior that you are asking them to do. Just talking about it. Don't whine. I need you to stop whining. I need you to use your words. Maybe they'll do it, maybe they won't. So have them actually practice it. So what it looked like for my son was he actually said, okay, I would say, Mommy, can I please have a granola bar? I'll have an apple later. Yep, sure, that's a great idea, Drew. That's a really good example of using calm and quiet voice, right? That's what practicing looks like. And we call that pre-correction. So think about before you enter a situation that is problematic for you. Pre-correct them, prompt them to do what you want them to do instead. And if you're able to, have them practice it. All right, next, notice when your child follows the expected behavior. Now, we are really good at noticing when they mess up. We're really good at it. But we have to train our brain. Just like, remember when we went from what's the challenging behavior to what's the positive alternative? We had to train our brain to do that. Same thing with this parenting technique. You have to train your brain to be looking for the positive, looking for your child to be doing the expected behavior, and notice it. This will look different for every kid, depending on their age, depending on what they like. Some kids love the praise and they eat it up. My kids love our praise, so we dole it out excessively for skills that they haven't yet mastered. Okay, so if it's something that they really aren't doing well with yet, you want to notice it when they are doing it and praise it. Some kids, you don't want to be as kind of over the top, but just kind of be, more nonchalant, more, age appropriate, but let them know that what they did, it was good and that you noticed. Now, a word to the wise here, when you are praising, we want to try to stay away from the general praise. So that means staying away from good job, good, oh, cool, nice going. We want to instead use behavior specific praise. So this means exactly what it sounds like. Praising the student, I'm used to working with students for the most part. Praising the kid for exactly what they did well. So that kind of brings you back to what your expectations are. If they were telling the truth, hey, I really appreciated that you told the truth there. I noticed. Good job. Or if they kept their feet and hands to themselves, hey, good job keeping your body to yourself. I noticed. Good for you. Okay, so it's going to look and sound different. You want it to be genuine. You want your kid to find it reinforcing. And you want to be specific, okay, specific to exactly what they did well. Not just good job, good going, awesome, but good job, blank, good job, what did they actually do? And the reason for that is so that they're more likely to do it in the future. If you just say good job, they might know exactly what they did well and they might know what you're praising. They might not. So if we want this behavior to continue in the future, and we do, then we want to be very specific about what it is that they did well. Okay, so we call this positive reinforcement, praising students and noticing when they do the appropriate behavior. All right, here's another important strategy as well. When a challenging behavior does occur, and they will, you have to train your child to tell them what the expected behavior is that you want to see. So for example, my 2 kids splashing in the bathtub. Instead of saying, stop splashing, I'm going to say, keep the water in the tub. Or I'm going to say, keep your hands to yourself. Another example could be, let's see, they've been playing in the backyard a lot. So they've been playing by these bushes and they're starting to kind of mess the bushes up. And I'm also kind of worried about them getting ticks. So instead of saying, stop poking the bushes, I might say, come over here and play. Stay away from the bushes, please. We want to keep the bushes alive and well. Okay, so I'm telling them exactly what to do. Now remember, if I say, stop poking the bushes, they might kick the bushes. They might throw things in the bushes. They might lay on the bushes. So it invites all these other things for them to be able to do. So we tell them exactly what you want them to do. And then praise them when they do it. So we call that prompting. So we're prompting them about what to do instead. This is really, really important. Okay, and now this one, very important as well. Don't give your child what they want after they've engaged in challenging behavior. Do give your child what they want after the expected behavior. So it looks like this. My kid's whining, I want my iPad, I want my iPad. You said I could have my iPad. I'm not going to give him the iPad. I might prompt him, right? I need you to say, can I have my iPad, please? Can I have my iPad, please? Yes, you can have your iPad. Another example could be, oh, I want a granola bar. I want a granola bar. Why can't I have a granola bar? Don't give him that granola bar now, or else you're reinforcing the whining. I see it a lot. I do it all the time on accident, right? We just want to kind of avoid that aversive situation, so we give in. But the more you give in, you're teaching your kid that behavior works. And so we want to instead teach them that the other behavior works. So if he's whining, I want a granola bar, I want a granola bar, I'd say, can I have a granola bar, please? Or I might just wait, if he knows what the waiting means. Or I might just say, ask politely, please. Any of those 3 are good. Giving him the exact words, waiting it out and not giving him what he wants, or telling him generally what he needs to do instead. So I could say, can I have a granola bar, please? Just wait it out, or say, ask politely. Once he does that, once he actually asks politely and stops whining, then I will give him the granola bar. Not to say that he's going to get a granola bar every time he asks politely. That's a different situation. But in general, be thinking about, okay, I'm not going to give him what he wants. I'm not going to give her what he wants after challenging behavior. I am going to give them what they want after expected behavior. And what we call that is differential reinforcement. All right. So there's a lot to this. I'm really welcome to questions. I can talk more in detail. If anyone wants to shoot me an email, I can definitely talk more about this. But in general, be thinking about how do we set up our expectations so it's representative of our values, that they're positively stated, that they're age and developmentally appropriate. And we use those expectations to prompt our kid before they enter a troubling situation. And we use those expectations by reinforcing them when we see them occur. And we are not giving in to the challenging behavior, but rather we are giving in when they're engaging in the expected behavior. Okay. So if you have questions, please email them to me. We have an upcoming session probably next week, which is going to be about responding to challenging behavior with composure. The first session and today's session were more about the proactive approach to things, but we know that challenging behavior is going to occur. So how do we do that? How do we respond when it comes up? And our examples will be found on the Google Drive. Okay. Thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.